School Board. This is Ron Wagner.
Good morning, Ron.
How are you?
Ron. Bruce Olson.
Nice to meet you. Just want to pass out a candidate thing for Ron.
Jill Marie.
Pleasure to meet you. Ron.
Dave Watt.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Ron.
Ron. Neil Score. Thank you.
Hi, Kim.
Nice to meet you.
Dennis.
There we go. Thank you. We're not going to your coffee. Good afternoon. I don't have enough for you all either, so
All right, Mr. Wagner, thank you for appearing before us this afternoon. You have, I believe, in the neighborhood of an hour, and so I don't want to, I know you're probably jealous of that time. I don't want to subtract to it with a lot of meaningless chit-chat. So let's begin. I will ask the first question, and then we will just go around the table in a manner that we have prescribed. And the questions are in front of you. We'll begin with item 4. Ron, tell us about yourself and why are you interested in becoming Albert Lee's next superintendent?
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, directors, family, community, students, and staff. I'm humbled to be here and excited to be for this opportunity. Ron Wagner, I'm married. I have 2 children, a daughter who's an office assistant up north, as well as works in the service industry, and a son who's a teacher. Love our teachers. He's a 3rd-year teacher, and I know he's been experiencing quite a bit, as many of our staff, during this time. Grew up in central Indiana. I'm originally from Indiana, and that's where the values of family and community have been instilled in me. Taught in Indiana for 13 years. Moved to Minnesota because of family. My wife's originally from Minnesota, so I wanted to move back to be near her family, so we moved to Minnesota and received a teaching job in North Minneapolis in a racially isolated school on a Friday before school began on that Monday, and was a teacher there, math teacher at that middle school for 5 years. Became a teacher leader, was part of the middle school platform implementation, became an assistant principal there, and then was transitioned to a principal in Southeast Minneapolis. I was a 7th principal in 10 years. So being flexible, adaptive has certainly been part of who I am. Now as an associate superintendent, I serve 22 schools, and really wanting to think about my values of family and community, and knowing that Albert Lee is strong and rooted in family and community. And that's something that I want to come back to and really have an opportunity to serve in a community that have those values, to serve a board that is working together on behalf of our students, and to really move the academic opportunity for our students forward. So Albert Lee is a great opportunity with 3,600 students to get to know students, staff, community. Each of the 18,000 community members of Albert Lee are those who I want to meet. So I'm excited for this opportunity, excited to share with you in a conversation about who I am and how my skills and experiences align to the values here at Albert Lee.
All right, I have the next question. Mr. Wagner, what are your beliefs about building effective leadership teams? How have you implemented those beliefs, and what strategies have you used to provide general oversight of all other district personnel?
So there's the African proverb, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. I believe in collaborative leadership. To build a team, it's about the power of we. It should not be myself as a boss telling people what to do. It should be inspiring others to follow, to move forward as a collective. The challenge in today's educational opportunities for our students and our staff are very challenging, and we can't do this in isolation. It has to be as a collaborative effort. One of my values is community and working on behalf and with the community as well as creating community within our school district. In my current role, serving 22 schools, I serve a wide array of schools across pre-K through 8th grade schools in Minneapolis, and I believe in building and inspiring the capacity in others. And it is ensuring that their opportunities are enhancing my thoughts, bringing in, I should not be the most brilliant, I should bring out the brilliance in others. So part of my role is working across all schools, as well as working and bridging into the central office to ensure that we're providing the supports for our why. And our why are our students, keeping our focus on our students and ensuring that we funnel all of our decisions back to our students. Currently, I work and oversee the lead associate for the associate superintendents. Due to budget cuts, we lost the chief of schools, so I absorbed those roles in Minneapolis and continue to lead the associate superintendents across the different grade bands. One piece that I continue to do is the general oversight of district personnel. I also work with school improvement specialists, and they're part of a team that supports the schools that have the comprehensive support and improvement identification, as well as the targeted schools based on the new S identification. So our work is a collaborative effort to meet on a regular basis to ensure that our goals, our school improvement goals, are aligned to our strategic goals in the district to elicit student outcomes. And we funnel that down into our PLCs, which are our professional learning communities and instructional leadership teams within the schools. So it's really working, it's bridging and connecting the central office and the middle management down into the schools. So it's working collaboratively with our building leaders as well as central office to align our supports for our schools to keep the student achievement moving forward.
I got the next one, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you.
How would you describe your management and leadership philosophy and your managerial and leadership strengths and weaknesses?
So I believe the strengths, I'm a collaborative leader, a servitude leader. I believe in the power, as mentioned earlier, the power of we, to support others, to move and empower them to make the decisions and support on behalf of our students. Is a student-centered leadership style. All of our focus should be on our why, and everything we do should be how is it supporting the opportunities for our students, not only for the academic supports, but the social-emotional well-being of our students. I'm out and I believe in being present and connecting with teachers. I'm a teacher at the core. I've taught for over 20 years, both elementary and middle school, and at the core of what I do is through the lens of a teacher. The quote that a good leader should never forget what it's like to be a teacher, I believe in that. And it is about leading through the lens of what's best for our students. You know, one of my growing edges is continuing to slow down to find the balance of not only my own personal balance, my family balance, but to ensure that I am supporting the school leaders in the schools in which I serve. I often get into, especially in the last 3 years, into the operational lens because that's where we've been forced into because of making all the decisions with COVID as well as the other things that we've been experiencing the past 3 years. So really getting and refocusing and doubling down on the educational opportunities, getting in the classroom, listening to our teachers, listening to our community, and ensuring that I'm bringing their voices are present. And it's important that all are visible. And walking into a classroom, we cannot teach the invisible. We cannot hear the invisible. It's important that we hear and listen and see and honor the voices of others. So I'm a relational leadership. I believe in collaboration as well as servitude leadership.
Ron, what kind of understanding would you hope to establish between the school board and yourself in order to administer the school district effectively?
So when looking at the policies and board governance and looking through policies 200 around the roles and responsibilities of the board, I think that's an important place to start. A trusting relationship between a board and a superintendent is essential. and that is through open communication, transparent communication. You as a board should never be surprised at a board meeting, should never be surprised of what's taking place. As a superintendent, I should be informing you of what's taking place. If a board member has a question, all board members should have the same answer or response. It's important that we work collectively. High-functioning school districts have a high-functioning board and superintendent relationship, and that's built on transparency, open communication, and frequent communication. Not having served as a superintendent, only as associate superintendent, I believe it's an opportunity not to bring in Ron's way, my way, but an opportunity to co-construct a working relationship with the board as we move together on behalf of our why. And again, our why are our students. Everything we do needs to be student-centered. Policies 300 around the management of the superintendent. My role is to take the policies, take the values, and implement, and then report back to the board on our progress. My evaluation as a superintendent should be based on the values of the board, the values of the academic student and experience of our students, as well as our staff. So as a superintendent, I should be informing you, reporting back on our progress of our strategic plan. How do we know? What do we need to do differently? And how do we know it's having an impact on our students' experience as well as our students' social-emotional well-being? So it is a trusting relationship. It's an open, collaborative relationship that's co-constructed. In my 100-day plan, it talks about goals of working with the board. It's getting to know me as a leader, as an authentic Ron Wagner. Who is he? What is he about? What is his why? What are his values? And me as a board learning about your values and us working together on behalf of Albert Lee, on behalf of the students and the staff. The job is hard enough as a teacher, hard enough as leaders, as staff, and as well as community members. We have to continue to move the academic achievement and agenda forward on behalf of our students and our community.
Mr. Wagner, school districts are responsible for providing a high-quality, equitable education for each and every student. Explain what a high-quality, equitable education means to you.
I know that the high reliability, the schools, the second level of that is talking about the effective teachers, and the level 1 talks about the culture. And when you think of high opportunity or high academic achievement for us, it starts with supporting our teachers. Research shows our number 1 lever for student achievement are our teachers. Number 2, it's leadership. So when you think of high quality opportunities, we have to think of the individual needs of each student and supporting the growth of each student. Each student needs to be visible, needs to understand that they have a path, and it's our job to support and facilitate their path forward. We can't, I was just meeting with some residents prior to this, talking just about their perspective of Albert Lee and schooling and the old lens of putting a student into a box. We can't do that. We have to think of individual needs of students, and we have to support each student in their journey. Every student enters differently, has a different entry point, a different on-ramp. Our job is to take that student, accelerate their opportunities, and provide the supports where needed. So when you think of multi-tiered system support, Core 1, it's ensuring that level Core 1 instruction is high quality. We're taking the students from where they're at, we're accelerating their needs, or if they have additional needs, how do we know and how are we providing those different levels of supports? If they're language needs, if it's literacy needs, what does that look like? And then that's bridging in that tier 2. So equitable opportunity, when you think of education equity, it's closing the gap of our higher achieving students to our lower achieving students, as well as removing the barriers of the disproportionality of the students that are not moving along as they should. Some of our students that are further behind, to close the gap, we need 2 years of high growth to get our students caught up. With the interrupted learning that has taken place, we need to ensure that we're monitoring each student's progress moving forward. The use of the FAST Bridge here in Albert Lee as a screener, that's the first step. Then what is our next step in the utilization of the diagnostics to support the students in their path moving forward? I, as a teacher, need to know who my students are, each and individual student, and what is that individual learning plan for the student. In my current role in 2020, when we moved to distance learning, we were talking about Q4. How are we going to grade through an online? It's not about grading. It was about supporting the students and developing an individual learning plan that bridged the current year and looked at the gaps in the students' learning to the incoming teacher receives that individual learning plan to backfill to support the gaps as to continue the support of the student moving forward. So it is about knowing our students. It's about knowing each individual student's needs, providing the supports for the students, not only academically, but the social-emotional well-being of each student. Our students and families have experienced a lot over the years. Our job is to support the students moving forward and understand the needs and ensure that we're providing those needs.
How would you lead the school district in developing long-range strategic and short-range operational plans?
That's a great question. And when you think of short-term and long-term and then through the operational lens, I do believe that, when you look at your long-term facility plan, your capital plan, your deferred maintenance, you need to take all that in consideration. I was afforded the opportunity to drive around Albert Lea and looked at the amazing complex, the amazing facilities. It's been a value of Albert Lea, and I applaud for you as the board as well as the community in supporting the operating referendum to move forward in belief in a high-quality environment for our students. Walking down the floor or walking down the hallway and looking at the terrazzo floors, they're amazing. It's very evident that it is a value. So when you look at, I need to take a step back and look at where are our investments, how do we continue to take pride in our facilities and our operational needs, knowing that we have short-term needs, whether there's deferred maintenance. I would have to seek to understand and ask questions and listen and really get a deeper and starting to peel back what are our facilities. How do I look around and to see things that, through an objective lens that may not have been seen in the past? And then ask the questions. And then co-construct what is that long-term facility plan that's sustainable. We can't continue to go back to the community. We have to build a sustainability plan to take pride and continue to have that short-term deferred maintenance, have our capital plan to support what are our next steps. Is it the facility maintenance of a new roofs, the windows? What does that plan, the short-term plan and the long-term plan look like? And I need to look at that capital plan. I haven't had the opportunity to look at that yet, but that would be sitting down, listening for understanding, and really then asking the questions to co-construct and listening to the community. But we want to ensure that our students have the very best learning environment, and it's a safe environment. Currently, in my current role, some of the operational interactions I've had is looking at safe and secure and welcoming entrances. Really think through an educational lens of how are we supporting you. If you think through an operational lens without the educational adequacy coming in to the lens, then you're building for today and not tomorrow. We took a school that sits in downtown that had no green grass or for students to play soccer. Students were unloading on a very busy highway, which is Hiawatha and kind of down through Minneapolis and Hennepin. What we did was we reconstructed, removed the smokestacks, and we need to get the buses down off the main street and into a secure place, and then take the playground, tear up the concrete, and revitalize that and put in grass for the students. That's bringing an educational adequacy lens. And when you think of educational equity as well as operational and resource equity to support the students and giving them an opportunity as well. So that's some of the work that I currently do in the schools. We moved an art room to the back of the building and moved the safe and secure entrance, which was more accessible for families, as well as accessible for some of our students that have different needs. So it's really thinking differently through the operational end and bringing in the educational or the perspective of of district staff or through the educational needs.
Mr. Wagner, I have the next question. We are looking for a leader who has a record of involvement. Sorry, I'll repeat it with the
Sure.
microphone. We are looking for a leader who has a record of involvement and visibility in both the school district and community. Provide us with your examples of how you will be involved, visible, approachable, and accessible in our district and the community.
So, thank you, Director, Vice Chair. This goes back to my value of family and community, and this is a reason that I made the trip down. It reminded me of driving home in Indiana, driving down 35. Is to come to a community that values the heritage that exists and getting to know families, going to church with families, being out and being present at school events. In my current role, I'm part of a district of schools. I'm not part of a community. And growing up in Indiana, growing up and teaching in southeastern Indiana, I was part of a community. I went to school events. I was part of the high school football games, as a former coach of football and wrestling and some of those sports. It's important to be present and to be that vocal cheerleader. And that is a void right now in my leadership. And that is something that is what I'm truly looking for, is a community in which would accept me for who I am, accept me for my authenticity, and know that I highly value being visible. I have a hard time sitting still, and being out in the community is something that I highly value. And knowing that Albert Lea has many community parks, I believe over 40, beautiful. I was just talking with the community member. I told him that I enjoy water skiing. They said, well, you could be part of the ski club and be on the top of the pyramid. I said, sign me up. So, that's who I am, and that's the way I lead. And it's these past couple years have been challenging because of going back to my previous statement of being in that middle management, a lot of operational, which is important to have the implementation of a lot of the COVID-related practices. I needed to be centralized. I miss children. I miss staff. I miss teachers. I miss having a conversation about the pedagogy that's taking place in the classroom to the different practices. A piece that, something I did prior to the COVID was we did some call them learning walks and instructional rounds, is walking with the principals and building capacity in our principals as instructional leaders. We presented down in Broward County in the Principal Supervisor Summit around the principal learning walk protocol, something we developed with the other associates. So I believe being elbow to elbow, walking with the principal, asking questions, inspiring and empowering the building leaders as well as the teachers, and listening to teachers. So tell me more. Tell me how your really great readers is impacting the students today. How do you know? Show me. Let's talk about it. Let me sit down and teach a lesson. That's who I am. Going back, I am a teacher at the core. A title's a title, but I believe in being who I am. And I'm Ron Wagner. I'm those who, I serve a school district, I serve teachers, I serve students, I serve the community in hopes of serving the board. And that's just who I am. So being present, being out and about, being at the sporting events, maybe being, unfortunately, the loudest, cheering, but knowing that I am, and they're seeing me in a grocery store. They're seeing me at a sporting event, seeing me on top of a water ski pyramid. But they're seeing Ron Wagner for who he is, and that's what I want to present today. And I have some closing remarks about that as well when we get to it. So thank you.
Ron, I should have mentioned at the outset that I'm not making a political statement with the mask. I tested positive last Wednesday. This will be my sixth day. I've now been unleashed, but I'm wearing a mask. So just so you know, don't get too close to me. Number 11, Ron, tell us about your previous experience related to directing, building, and implementing a school district budget. What process have you used or would you use for long-range financial planning?
So, being an elementary teacher, as a middle school teacher, and a math teacher, I know the importance of fiscal management and fiscal leadership. That's absolutely essential. When we think of Albert Lee, which has had a strong fiscal fund balance as well as being fiscally healthy, that is something that needs to continue. And as we know that when we think of the legislature and the e-bill that unfortunately didn't make any movement now, the cross-subsidy of Albert Lee in special education is like $3.9 million. If inflation would have, and the general ed formula would have continued with inflation, that's $2.9 million, $2.8 million Albert Lee is missing out because of its $800 of a gap. So being present and being an advocate in the legislature to ensure that schools are fully funded is something that I continue to do through our lobbyists as well as working with the legislature. Jim Davney, who is really pushing a lot in the legislature, was a parent in the community in which I served as a principal, so I've been able to work with him and talk about the importance of fully funding special education, increasing general ed funding, as well as I know that we're also cross-subsidizing many of our multilingual families as well, or students as well. In my current role, I'm part of a cabinet that develops a budget of $655 million, and we've had a declining enrollment. And we know the only way to increase revenue is decrease spending, which generally results in cuts. It is increase student enrollment, which we know is essential to not only recruit but retain our students, and that goes back to the high-quality educational opportunities for our students. But also then it is asking the community. And I know an operating referendum was just passed, so we have to be fiscally responsible and prudent with our finances. Knowing the fund balance of 12%, which policy 714, it's starting with the policies. And in Minneapolis, we have had a declining enrollment. We've had to make cuts. And it doesn't feel good. It's choosing good from good. So my role as part of the cabinet is developing a balanced budget, which is part of policy, and presenting that to the board based on the board values. But not only that, I serve 22 schools, and to develop an aligned budget to the values of the board. The board declares the values. Our role is to develop a budget that's aligned to the values, that supports the school improvement plan, that supports student achievement and well-being. Knowing that our schools have to make divestments or cuts, we use an equity lens and an equity considerations document that I work with the building leaders on. If they have to make divestments or if they have to reduce, what are the impacts for and how does it disproportionately impact staff in a building? Our teachers work hard enough. Cutting staff, that's hard on morale. Moving staff, that's hard on teachers. Our focus should be on and investing in our students' opportunities. So when developing a budget, in my current role, we take, as a cabinet, we take this $655 million budget. We look at and fund our schools first. As an associate superintendent, my role is to keep the cabinet focused on students. When we start digressing, how does this divestment, how does what we're doing impact student achievement? And then it's also then to measure the return on investment. How do we know our investments are having an impact on student experience or on staff experience and increasing student academics? If not, then if it's a legacy investment, then isn't an investment that we need to continue, and how do we know? So it is that return on investment and asking the hard questions. When you have to make reductions, it's keeping students at the center and keeping the reduction as far away from the classroom as possible. And that is my role currently. And I work with the schools, again, to develop a balanced budget based on their allocations and their number of enrolled students in correlation with the number of teachers.
All right, I have the next question. Mr. Wagner, what would be your reaction if the school board opposes something which you thought was sound? And what if the school board proposes something which you think is unsound or inappropriate?
Great question, Derek. Let me sit up on that one. All right. So I believe in civil discourse and transparency, and it's important to hear perspectives. Just when we're engaging with the community, we need to enter into a space of listening and understanding. And we have to ask the hard questions. And we have to stay centered on our values, which are on students. What impact does this have on students? And we need to be able to ask the hard questions. Those questions we need to have as behind closed doors and have that and wrestle with those questions, those perspectives, those opinions. How, again, is it impacting students and their experience? Keeping our focus on our why. If it's a disagreement, I need to understand and find that middle ground. What is it that we can compromise on to move forward as a collective? There have been some deep conversations around masks, other conversation at board, and it's been challenging for board members. It's been challenging for superintendents. It's been challenging for staff members, for teachers, for parents. There's been a lot that's transpired. We have to operate as one, and we have to have those hard conversations behind closed doors. So if it's something I believe in, it's understanding and presenting my perspective and presenting the why and how does that have an impact on student experience as well as on staff and the culture and climate, and what are the unintended outcomes? What are the unintended consequences? What are the opportunities? So it's almost a SWOT analysis. Kind of goes back to my 100-day plan. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are some of the opportunities? How do we move forward on that? And, just in teaching mathematics, my way is not the way. Teaching mathematics, it's a way. Everyone enters differently, and if your way of arriving through an algorithm to get at an answer, help me understand. Help me understand your perspective. How did you get that? And it's asking those questions for understanding. So, it's the right decision may not always be the popular decision, but I think that is important. And as we exit the conversation, we need to have a compromise and a collective understanding as we present and move forward. And that goes back to the board and superintendent relationship and the health of that relationship. Because I would assume that you would agree that the job is hard enough as directors to not be able to present as a united front on behalf of our students, our staff, and our community. That's a good. I think I danced around that one a little bit. So thank you.
And Mr. Wagner, as an educational leader, describe a significant challenge you have faced and tell us how you addressed it.
So, Director Olson, that is, challenges present themselves daily, and we can go from the challenges of interrupted learning to the distance learning, not having a learning management system, to implementing one-on-one. We weren't just ready for COVID, but I'm going to give you one as a building leader. And stepping in as a former math teacher into pre-K through 8th grade school as a brand new principal, what I was seeing we were considered a failing school by No Child Left Behind before ESSA. We had a mass exodus of families. We had a different opinion on inclusion. We had, the idea that kind of go take the students and then bring them back. So it was really taking a step back, getting a collective efficacy of understanding of values of we're in this for our students. And then peeling back further, what I was seeing was a huge opportunity and learning gap in mathematics. So using implementation science, the first phase of that is exploration. My role was to go in and understand why. Why were we seeing a gap in mathematics? What was it that we were seeing? During that exploration, I was seeing that even hearing teachers saying I wasn't good in math. Math is higher. They're just, it's more of that, here's the workbook page, because of their comfort level. So my role was to understand where teachers were entering in their comfort level of mathematics. And the installation phase is then to start taking that data. I did the whole year of my formal observation during math lessons. And what I was finding was the depth of knowledge in the teachers' mathematics, not at their fault, just as my son is coming out of college after some years, and teaching, and his depth of knowledge in literacy is not where it should be. He has a mathematical background, but his literacy is very superficial. So how is he being supported? In mathematics, my role was to support the teachers during that installation, to really say, what is it that's impacting the students' experience in mathematics? And what I was finding, it was a lot of whole group instruction. And it was teaching to the middle, and it was not the differentiation that we needed to see. So we moved into, and I brought the teachers in, and we unpacked. How could it look different? In the literacy block, we were doing a flex grouping, which is which was a kind of the workshop model. So we said, let's look at the workshop model for mathematics, and let's see what would that look like. So what we first did, we had a neighboring district that was implementing it on a very high level. Let's go look to understand what it would look like in practice. So I took a group of teachers and from K-5, and we went and we began looking at and understanding what would that look like in your classroom. Then bringing it back, what supports what you need. That's kind of the installation phase. And then we develop an implementation plan. The implementation plan was to break it out. Instead of 3 groups, we're going to do 2. We're going to do a flex grouping, which is your group model, and then we're going to do an independent practice. And then we're going to build capacity in that and develop the capacity in the teachers, and then move into 3 levels where there is that skill application or the technology piece. And then we also did not only grade level PLCs, professional learning communities, but we did a horizontal and then as well as a vertical for professional learning community, and brought in the professional development and the support for the teachers in mathematics. What does the everyday mathematics look like in an instruction? How do we bring in number talks? And how do I support you and bring in those supports? We brought in a math coach to work with the teachers, as well as bridged the middle school teachers in with some of the elementaries and begin to unpack what is that scope. And then finally, during the full implementation, we began to support in backward planning. And what is that scope? So let's take Q1 and let's walk backward and deconstruct the standards to say, what is it that we want the students to learn today? What does the success criteria look like? How do we know, and how are we measuring? So that's where we moved into full implementation. As an associate superintendent, we then started to bridge that out, and then we did 10 schools, supported in the same implementation phase, took the teachers out, used the school I was a former principal at as a laboratory school, to where they went to look at the school, at the practice, and had the teachers talk about how and lead the instruction of what the workshop model would look like. Currently, we have all 43 elementaries using the workshop model, and then we brought in a technology component that fortunately supported the students during distance learning. It was a skill practice that differentiates the student learning that they were able to use during the COVID time. So that's, the challenges that I faced was really bringing in that collective efficacy. There were some that were a little apprehensive. So you kind of have that 60-30-10. 60 were leaning in, 30 were kind of on the fence, 10 were saying, whoa, how do I support the 10? How do I elevate the 60? And then what are the supports for the 30?
Mr. Wagner, as a superintendent of schools, how would you help build trust between the community and the district, between the staff and administration?
You'll see at the top of my 100-day plan, it's one conversation at a time. And that needs to happen. I need to listen. Going back to the question about being present out in schools, and authentically meeting staff, meeting community, meeting students where they are. Often we forget about student voice. Student voice is absolutely essential to really guide the direction, the experience of our students. As a superintendent, I would like to have a leadership cabinet made up of students to really have the perspective and the experience of the students brought into visioning out our next steps. Being out and talking and listening to the community, just as spent an hour at Caribou listening to 7 community members and their experience, and really authentically listening for understanding. And that goes in, as I think about cultural competence versus cultural humility, as myself as a leader, I need to sit down with the community, not stand above. True parent engagement, community engagement is not about telling and informing, it's about collaborating and empowering and to ensure that we're moving together as one. It goes back to that collective we. I can't do it alone. It's the folks sitting back here. It's you all. It's all of us working together and finding that compromise to move together. And that's something going back to the value of community and family and really lifting the voices up. Hearing from the families that have been maybe historically invisible. Hearing from the students that have been historically invisible. And then really ensuring that we're bridging and connecting. My role moving in as a new superintendent is not only listening, you have the learning, listening, and leading, but I believe in the bridging and connecting. I think those two pieces are essential to connect the school to the community. The school system is the heartbeat of the community. Strong schools, strong community. As we think about resourcing the community, it is about recruitment, retainment of high-quality teachers, as well as our families. And going to high quality as a family, you want to say, I'm sending my students to Albert Lee because of the high-quality experience that my students are experiencing and have the opportunity to experience. So it is bridging and connecting. Knowing that there's a new mayor coming in, what a great opportunity for a new superintendent to work collaboratively to vision out Albert Lee schools as the heartbeat as it continues to move forward. Albert Lee is strong and will continue to be that heartbeat, but that is essential for the new superintendent to continue to elevate that and move that forward. So it is about being present, it's connecting, it's bridging, it's listening, it's being out and working with the commerce as well as the business, and then understanding the heritage. If you think of a tree metaphorically, if you think of all of the newer families, the families after, you're hearing from them, but what's under the ground? What are the roots? What are some of our senior citizens? Tell me about your experience. Tell me about the heritage. Tell me about the history of Albert Lee, and keeping that history alive will be important.
Mr. Wagner, if you could describe your experience with negotiations and the collective bargaining process, how do you or would you approach contract negotiations during a negotiating year?
Well, that's a interesting question. As it may have made the news down here. We just had an experience with negotiations. And being part of the negotiation team, it was challenging. Personally, professionally, knowing that my own son was out, knowing that families, students, just came back after COVID, our students weren't in school, and what was missing is sitting down, listening to our teachers, and really hearing perspective. We had very tight board parameters in terms of financial parameters, but knowing our negotiations occurred over a long period of time, I do believe a misstep or an opportunity was we weren't truly authentically listening for understanding and perspective to work collectively. And when you think of collective bargaining, it is about having that discourse. It is about keeping students at the center and knowing that, yeah, that's That's a little outside of maybe some parameters. Let's talk through that a little bit. How is that going to, let's say, how can we compromise? And that's kind of where we went through in terms of mediation. Unfortunately, it had a lot of impact on our community, many of our staff, many of our families. And if we don't take a step way back and sit down as one and listen and work as one to say, we may not agree. Let's talk through that. Let's work through a compromise. Because ultimately, how is it that we're finding value in what you're doing? We're valuing our teachers. Keeping and retaining our high-quality teachers is challenging right now. Our teachers are burning the candle at both ends. So is most of our staff. But continuing to lift them up, empower the teachers, and have a common understanding so we don't get to the 12th hour and say, oh, we're miles apart. We need to collectively work together. And it is, the finances are tight. But so is, when you think about retaining and valuing our employees. Maybe some of our lower paid employees like our educational support professionals. That was one that we know were underpaid, under market, really valuing and lifting them up as well. So it's listening to the values of the board, working with with our teacher union and our different bargaining units to move forward and know that to keep our organizational health, to keep our fiscal, stay within fiscal parameters, and to move forward on behalf of our students will take all of us working together.
Mr. Wagner, upon review of the Albert Lee Area School District's hiring criteria, is there anything about your past work experience that you would like to highlight for us?
So, is this the, yes. So, I really want to the board, to the community, to staff, and I really want to make an authentic statement. And that statement is, I'm originally from Indiana. I grew up in central Indiana, a small town in Indiana. The values instilled in me and my mother, as well as the community, was family and community. Taught in southern Indiana on the Ohio River. It was beautiful. Could see it from my classroom. Moved to Minnesota and was hired on a Friday before school began that Monday. And Minneapolis believed in this person coming from Indiana to have an impact. They gave me an opportunity. I committed to that opportunity for 22 years. And I have been in Minneapolis 22 years. I was in Indiana for 13. And I only changed districts in Indiana because my principal left and went to another district and asked me to come along with him. I believe in commitment. This is not a resume builder. This is not a trophy, a place to get a trophy and put it on the shelf and move forward. This is me seeking out Albert Lee. This is me coming to Albert Lee, asking for an opportunity to serve the board and serve the community. This is, I am Ron Wagner as a person who's student-centered. This is who I am. This is who you will get. 22 years in Minneapolis, I'm not, I'll use another search firm aboard, I'm not a city slicker, quote unquote. I am grew up on a farm. I'm not afraid to be on top of that pyramid on the water ski, which I still have. I'll have wonderful memories of that statement. But I do believe that my experience and my commitment to student opportunity, to student experience, teacher at the core, will be important. The Mesabi tribe begins every greeting with, "How are the children?" And their response is, "The children are doing well." That is my commitment to keeping the eye on our why, and that is our students. I've done that for 22 years, from a teacher to now as an associate superintendent, as well as the 13 years of teaching in Indiana. It is about the students. And I will continue to be a teacher at the core. I believe in the work that our teachers are doing. I believe in the work that our principal and our staff are doing. And I believe my experiences have given and afforded me the opportunity to serve Albert Lee in a way that the board would expect, the community would expect, and our families would expect.
Ron, what questions do you have for us?
So it's my turn. One question I do have, and if afforded the opportunity, I'd go a little, peel back and go a little deeper, but hearing from you and knowing that, I heard from some residents, but hearing from board directors, what are you as, and I know that you're here with a purpose as directors, but thinking about it being a resident of Albert Lee, what are you most proud of Albert Lee as a community?
Okay. Well, I will tell you, one of the things that I'm not from the area, and I shouldn't say that because I've been here 29 years, but I didn't grow up here. And I felt very welcomed. I felt like this was a community that embraced family, embraced many of the things that you talked about. But I think what has impressed me, and even if there's disagreement, there seems to be, for the most part, mutual respect in approaching those ideas or maybe differences. And I think the most positive thing is our children and our school district. Businesses that come to the area or look at coming here, one of the first questions they ask, or one of the first things they research is our school district.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The educational opportunities. Our high school sits right next to Riverland Community College, and a number of students, take college classes while they're still going to high school. And I think that is really neat. We have a good, strong ALC program. We just graduated a number of students last Thursday, and some of them are even going to Riverland Community College. So we got a good educational core here, I think.
Thank you.
I would say we're an enduring community. Over the years, I've been here 38 years, and through all the struggles and tribulations, the school district working out in the community, the farmland fire is one of the big ones that changed the demographics of the community, the businesses coming in, but the ability to collaborate and work together makes Albert Lee truly a great community to live and thrive in, and continue to work with our students. Again, they're our number one priority, but to make them the best they can be for our community and moving forward.
Thank you.
Joe?
I would just add the strength and hardworking people that we have and their resilience to find a way through hard times.
I think it's got a good small town feel for you. Family oriented. I mean, we've spent a lot of money over the last several years on not just school facilities, but city and county, and to give those opportunities for learning. As we've talked with community colleges and PSEO and things like that for our kids. And our AP now has really taken a nice lead for our students in the last couple of years, probably 3 years mostly, but giving just a lot of opportunity.
Thank you.
My answer would be, I just think we have a very supportive community. We want our community and our school district and our businesses here to succeed. And, you always have some naysayers out there who complain, but for the most part, people here are just good people, hardworking people, and they really do look out for each other.
And I guess that leaves me. I've been around for quite a few years. Bruce and I are the same age, and we're both lifelong residents. We graduated from this school, and we graduated from the same grade school. What impresses me about the community is that it is a community, and I'm involved in a lot of things, and a lot of community members get involved in causes that support Albert Lee. and they really do work hard to make things happen.
So I did hear, I heard family, mutual respect, college classes, ALC, strong that educational core, hardworking, resiliency, family, the community, the PSEO, just the hard, good people, and I'm really hearing a lot around that small town, that community, and that family, and keeping the students at the center. So I appreciate hearing that from the board. I appreciate you sharing that with me, and that's the only question that I think I have the opportunity to ask. So with that, my takeaway is that your commitment as a board to the why is evident, and I appreciate your sharing.